on chapter 5 and 6. I read 5 and 6 yesterday. It's not too bad. It's not like it doesn't go into stuff quite yet. We're still treading water here. Yesterday we did have to skip up like a paragraph and like maybe a paragraph and a half we had to skip, so that's cool. All right, guys. So this is chapter 5. Now, I did Google these, so yes, they are right. So this chapter 5 is called Pauvre de Bête, Poor Little Thing, and whatever. I Googled it and it told me that, so that's how it told me to say it. I may be mistaken because it was last night and I was half asleep. No, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. But chapter 5 is Pauvre de Bête, Poor Little Thing. All right. My mother limited my interactions with others as much as possible. I was a daisy in the Girl Scouts, but when it was time to graduate to become Brownie, I got stuck there, never becoming a junior. My mom volunteered for the Girl Scouts, but we changed troops a lot, always starting over, because my exposure to anyone other than my mother was so limited. I had no idea that the way I lived was different or unusual. How could I? Other than you were mingling with other kids? I don't know. I attended school for 1 year, kindergarten. After that, Mama pulled me out to homeschool me, except that was a lie. She didn't register me as a homeschooler with either state that I lived in. So let me say this about homeschooling. Hey, convict ballerina. Let me say this about homeschooling, guys. So when I got out of school, my mom did not have to sign me up for homeschooling. I want you guys to remember, me and Gypsy are very close in age. I am 35, she is 33. So during this time when she would have been in school, one, if she was never enrolled, they're never going to question it, because technically, like, they're not going to look into everybody's, like, birth certificates and say, oh, this person's supposed to be in school. Are they in school? No, that's why so many kids are failed in the system. So, and then two, in a lot of states, in most of the 50 states during this time, you didn't have to sign up for a homeschooling project. What you had to do was basically, you had to show the people. So like, for instance, I was seeing a counselor, so my mom would set up like a curriculum. So if Dee Dee had already said, hey, I'm teaching her XYZ, and later in this chapter, you're going to learn that she was learning a lot of things at home. Even if it didn't seem to her like she was. But there is nothing that needs to be signed up for homeschooling in that era. Now, yes, if you've ever been in school for any period of time, if a kid even gets signed up, if they're not in school or enrolled in a school, they are going to look into it. For instance, my son's going to a charter school, and he was supposed to be going to a public school, and the public school called me when he went into middle school to make sure that he was at that charter school that I had put on the documents. But back then, that was not like that. When I was pulled out in 4th grade, and I was taught. So basically, the people around me, like my counselors and things I was seeing, or my previous school, they basically just wanted to see a continued curriculum only up until 5th grade. And then after that, like, yes, I still learned a lot of things at home, but it wasn't a set schedule. So that's like a huge thing. You don't have to be like enrolled in it. No school officials seem to notice. Again, they're not going to. I remember when we'd see new doctors and the intake forms asked where I went to school, Mama would just list the local school I was zoned for. And that's another thing too, is she could have either listed the local zone school, because back then homeschooling was like that. You would still do that, because my mom used to do that. Or she could have listed homeschooling, and they wouldn't have questioned any kind of homeschooling as long as she had a curriculum. That was that. Nobody followed up or questioned us. Everyone who hears my story is appalled at the medical institutions failing me, but the education system was actually the first to let me fall through the cracks. Again, whole statement not true, because it was not the fault of the educational system ever. Without a broader range of exposure to how others lived their lives, I didn't suspect that our daily schedule was odd or dysfunctional. We woke up each day at around 11 a.m. I'd have my medicines. At the start of my day, my mother usually slammed a sealed tube of Pillsbury biscuits against the countertop to pop it open, and she'd bake them on a baking sheet for breakfast. I always thought that the way she made the pop sound was like magic. When the whole house smelled buttery, she'd prepare my Pediasure and meds and administer them to me through the feeding tube. She would eat the biscuits herself. We'd watch The Bold and the Beautiful. We would only get dressed if we had to run an errand. We'd watch a movie if there wasn't an errand to run. She didn't eat meat, so most of the time she made sweet peas over rice for her dinner. Okay. We would watch another movie. Then we'd start our night routine. She'd bathe me, dress me, and put me in our bed. Technically, I had my own bed in my own bedroom, but ever since I could remember, I slept on the left side of my mother's bed. Next, she'd turn on my breathing machine, which actually didn't help me breathe at all. Then she'd turn out the lights. It didn't help you breathe at all, Gypsy, really? I'm sure you were really thankful for that when you stopped breathing in the middle of the night. To your dismay. My routine was all I had, but it never included going to school or outside to play. The times I spent outside were so few and far between that I remember each one vividly. I was a very lonely child. When I was young, maybe up to age 14, I thought I could make friends with other kids who were like me, with other Make-A-Wish kids, or other wheelchair-bound kids I would compete against in the Gumbo Games, which was Louisiana's smaller version of the Special Olympics. I remember one girl who I saw a lot at these events. She had spina bifida and was always accompanied by a home health aide. But then Mama moved us away and we didn't see each other after that. With all my arts and crafts, I would trace and cut out circles and squares and long rectangles, and I'd paste them together life-size paper people and sit them on the couch with me. Sometimes I would have several of them and have a play group in my house. Being flanked by the paper people while watching TV made me feel less alone, like I belonged to a community even if it was an imaginary one. I had a rubber pet rat, the kind they sell during Halloween time. I even had a friend that was a snowman. One glorious memory I have playing with Mama was when we first moved to Aurora, Missouri. Before we were blessed to receive our Habitat for Humanity house, it was our first winter experience. Being from Louisiana, seeing snow was like someone shook the snow globe I lived inside, making me a princess in a little kingdom of cottony dreams. Mom and I built a snowman and named him Frosty, the Mardi Gras snowman, like I said. Mama was all about the culture. Her Cajun spice melted the snow that day. We laughed and threw snowballs, me sitting in the snow, my legs frozen by her command, my heart warmed by icicles, crying blue droplets in the low light of the winter sun. We didn't even own a shovel. After one big snowstorm blocked the walkway to our door, a neighbor yelled across the yard to us, holding up a shovel. "Hey, you're going to need one of these." We all laughed because only people who had never seen snow before would glorify the mess. Soon enough, we learned, like everyone else, to dread the aftermath of a wintry wrath. This sounds like, so this whole paragraph about the neighbor saying, "Hey, you're going to need one of these," and holding up a shovel, wasn't that in the act? Wasn't that part of the act? Excuse me? In terms of winter festivities, that one snowman building episode is all I have in my memory bank. Mama and I didn't celebrate Christmas or any other national holidays with anyone else. I mean, she gave me presents on Christmas, but it was never celebrated with family. Food and festive music and tradition were not things Mama infused in our routine. I never had the joy of family meal or a New Year's Eve celebration. I wondered a lot about what Dad and Christy and the kids were up to, especially on New Year's Eve. I didn't know my dad very well since we only saw each other once a year at best. Mama had moved so far away from them, and Dad's job took him out of town a lot. I have a tiny random memories of us at the mall and one of my little brother Dylan and me at Walmart. He bought a Star Wars lightsaber. I got a baby doll. Christy and Dad came to one of my wheelchair races once, but I didn't see them or talk to them much beyond that handful of visits. But I did know Dad was a fun-loving because he made me laugh and had a lot of energy. I imagined them having New Year's Eve parties with neighbors and lots of music. Yeah, she had cats. She had 2 cats, and I think she had a dog once too, but nobody ever said what happened to them either. Yeah, she said she never watched it. So later in this chapter, the next one, she does talk about that she never watched it. But in previous chapters, she said about how the act didn't portray her mom blending food and feeding her correctly. So I don't understand how you didn't watch it, but you're commenting on it. You know what I mean? I pushed away the thoughts of the other family I had somewhere, and we watched the ball drop in Times Square on television, Mom and me, while we heard horns and clacking cowbells of the world outside from inside our dark and gloomy snow globe. Like all worlds, our globe had its own rules, except our rules defied reality. In our world, you didn't have to be a baby to wear diapers or use bottles. In our world, you didn't use maxi pads or tampons during your period. You wore pull-ups. In our world, the hair on your head was as filthy as the hair on your down there, and both places should be shaved clean. So first of all, I mean, nowadays women wear pull-ups all the time, so in my eyes she was ahead of her time with this, and we're gonna hear more about that, but that's just in my eyes. So she left the cats out one night and one was rescued and adopted. That's good to know. Yeah, the picture of her and Rod is at the Gumbo. That's one that goes around a lot. From the time I was born to when I was a month shy of 24 years old, Mama had never weaned me off the bottle. The baby bottle was my safety blanket, my security that I turned to when I was nervous before a doctor's appointment or surgery. A soothing mechanism to help me sleep or just a comfort and companion when I would watch television or draw. It was filled with Pediasure. Strawberry flavored was my favorite. I would stick the bottle underneath my armpit to warm it up. I was extremely picky when it came to the nipples of the bottles. I didn't like the brown ones and preferred the clear nipples because they controlled the flow better, in my opinion. I didn't like the fluid to come out too fast. I preferred the bottle to the feeding tube, of course, because I got to enjoy the taste of nourishment. By sucking on the bottle wasn't a secret. We packed it up like we would in a diaper bag when we ran errands. Of course, people would look sideways at first at a 19-year-old whipping out her bottle. But Mama would remind them she's very mentally slow, or it's one of the 2 ways she can get sustenance. To which people always replied with a nod. Yes, of course, makes total sense. So first of all, nobody knew you were 13, Gypsy. Just like you said you didn't know you were 13, nobody knew you were 13. As a result of my late stage bottle sucking, I developed the same teeth as SpongeBob SquarePants, and all my remaining teeth were ultimately extracted for a reason I still do not know. She does in fact know why she got those teeth extracted. Because she was not only sucking from that bottle of Pediasure, I'm sure she put some soda in there as well. Just saying. For public appearances, like when we were being interviewed by a newspaper reporter or at a charity event, Mama brought my sippy cup. That was another method of my nourishment in use right up until I got... Hold on. That was another method of my nourishment in use right up until I was arrested. I had several sippy cups with Buzz Lightyear, Elsa, and Nemo on them. Again, I've been through the pictures of the crime scenes, and I've never, I've zoomed in, I've done all the work. I have not seen a baby bottle or a sippy cup in either of those. Just saying. This was also normal to me, sitting there on the rug of our home, sucking away sweetly, until one day my normal was disrupted by an abnormal flow. Around the time I was 13, about a year before Hurricane Katrina, I was sitting on the floor in the living room of our apartment in Slidell, Louisiana. Playing with dolls and watching The Little Mermaid, I noticed something wet and maroon colored underneath me. So dark, I thought I was sitting in barbecue sauce at first. I lifted myself into my wheelchair and called for Mama, crying that something was wrong with me. You're bleeding, baby, she said, as if we were expecting my bottom to fall out like that. Okay, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to bleed like that for a good part of your life. That was about all the knowledge I would get from her about a period. She never even called it a period or a menses or anything like that. She just kept saying graphically, you're gonna bleed. That's when she left the room and returned with the clean pull-up. Here, she said, let's get you changed and try to get you clean as we can. Bleeding will happen to you. To this day, I wish I had more motherly words to keep in my head every time my time of the month comes. I wish Mama could have been a mother in that moment and explain to me how blessed I am to have a regular period because I will reproduce one day. Make life a sacred superpower. She made me feel the opposite of special, speaking of menstruation with a tone of gore and disgust. I remember when I first saw the movie Carrie in prison, and the mom in the movie was so warped, and when it came to Carrie's monthly, I felt oddly connected. Oh my god, that mother is just like my mother, I thought. Okay, so let's back this up. So Carrie, the reason Carrie's mom was the way she was because of religious beliefs, okay? So put it in a sense that she's already said that her mother was super Catholic, she was super Catholic, all of that fun stuff, right? Her mother felt the same way that I think any mother would. Some mothers do it separate, different ways. She was freaking out. Her kid can now get pregnant. So if Gypsy ran away or something, she can get pregnant. Now, it's not to say that this is true, like this is how it was explained to her. But again, pull-ups isn't weird. A lot of women wear menstruating underwear now. So it's not weird, in my opinion. It was ahead of the times, and Dee Dee was ahead of those times. She was, exactly. But Carrie is a totally separate thing. There was separate reasons for this. You know what I mean? My mother lied to doctors all the way into my later teen years, saying that I never got my first period. Doctors know. That was very concerning to all of them. We needed to undergo another battery of tests. Maybe my pituitary gland was the problem, or maybe they should look at my bladder for good measure. To test my bladder and urine, I had a catheter inserted 4 times, which is so painful. So I've never had my bladder tested. I have had my urine tested. I've had a lot of issues, and I've had family members have a lot of issues with their time of the month, okay? So, but this was never done. A catheter is never... Now, if any medical people are in the chat, a catheter is never inserted to do testing unless you're put under to do testing. Now, if I'm wrong, I apologize, but that just don't seem right to me. Okay, so that wasn't the issue. The issue was she claimed the doctors did not know she had her period. Yeah, see, they wouldn't have. So again, we're here. I meant to actually Google that, and I never did. But thank you so much, Andrea, for answering that. I mean, if she had stones, that's not what she's saying. She's saying this was due to her period. Her period. They would most likely test you other ways, not for this, not with a catheter. There would have been other issues, you know? Exactly, Jessica, that too. Anyways, I never asked her why the lies about this, especially when we both knew that I bled every month on schedule. I was just never a why kind of kid. And I didn't want to steal her thunder. I saw how she soaked in the attention and limelight, and even though it was only local, beyond the interpersonal attention in the form of sympathy and martyrdom, she delighted in. She basked in the bright spotlight when the cameras rolled. Turn on the news, she'd say to someone she had called on the phone. Pick up this Sunday's newspaper, you'll never guess who's in it. She teased with stars in her eyes. The notoriety added a dimension to her disease. Yes, the Munchausen syndrome by proxy that she was never diagnosed with was the most dangerous part of the abuse, but it also acted as a backstage pass to my mother's internal cinematic show. Whatever that movie in her mind was, I wasn't the star of it. Mama's friend from high school said, "Your mama wanted to be famous. She wanted to marry a rock star or an actor." When the press arrived, Mama would be doing all of the talking, while I numbly waited for my cue. Like a stage mother, beauty queen Dee Dee fed me my lines. "It's a dream come true. This makes me so happy. My mom is my best friend." Through me and through the script we memorized, Mama could achieve some level of the fame she had long desired. Even when nobody was there, the act was still on and the script was still in play. When my dad would call me, she became just like one of those stage moms or dance moms, mouthing lines or counting cadence. I never had a moment alone on the phone with my father, nor an authentic conversation. She always hovered. I can't imagine how my dad must have felt knowing that every time he wanted to check in on me, my mother was the first line of defense. That's for any divorced people. He had to get through her, and sometimes he didn't. When she answered his call, she'd set up the expectation for how the call would go and saying something like, "She's tired today," or "We're about to run errands." So like an official at a football game, she'd set the clock. After she preempted the conversation, she'd hand me the phone. Me in the wheelchair pulling the cord on the landline, saying an awkward hello to the man who I, at the time, only referred to as my father, instead of Dad. Dad felt too casual and comfortable and familiar for the long-distance relationship we had. "Tell him about the new doll I bought you," Mama whispered before I could say anything beyond hello. "Hi, Mama bought me a new doll for being brave at the doctor's yesterday." "Wow, you're a lucky girl, Gypsy," Dad answered. "What did you name her?" Already bored and too far from her agenda, Mama continued her prompt. "Tell him that I stayed up with you all night last week because of your fever." "I had a fever last week," I parroted, "and Mama stayed up all night with me. We were so tired." My dad cleared his throat and said, "Well, I always tell Dee Dee she does a fine job being your mama." Then Mama would move around and face me and whisper, "All right, that's enough. Tell him we're about to leave." "Well, I have to go now. We have to leave." When Dad and I'd hang up, she'd say, "I love you," and I'd say the same, parroting him as I wasn't sure we actually could know each other well enough to love each other. Mama would look at me twisted as if we were pretty roommates who was after her boyfriend, like I was competition. Is that why she kept me ugly and infantilized? If I came of age, would I be prettier or skinnier or win the crown at the pageant instead of her? She'd grab one of the cats and baby talk with it, loving on her and talking about me as if I weren't in the room. "Come on, Tebeka-boo, give your mama a sweet little kiss." More often after we hung up, Mama would badmouth my dad for a long time. She loved him so much she hated him. Her disgust for my dad was the reason she told me that she kept my hair so short as a child. When your hair is longer, you look just like your father," she'd say, spewing venom. I never felt too bad for him because I was well aware from Mama of what a bad person he was. His poor new children were now the ones being abused. Mama would never put up with his abuse. I felt very lucky she protected me from him all those years. So she's just making her dad look a little more better than he actually is. Oh my God, what is up with this person? They keep requesting to be on live. No. Getting attention and drawing it are two different things. Maybe she thought conversations like this earned her accolades from outsiders, especially my dad, or telling others about the non-existent abuse at the hands of my father made her even braver, more of a feminist. But when she got the attention of Child Protective Services, my mother deflected the attention instead of embracing it. I was not drugged the day the woman from the Department of Family Services, DFS, gave us a surprise visit on October 26, 2009. I've been told the act portrayed it that way. I still haven't found it necessary to watch the series. The truth is, I was still quite trusting of my mother at the time. The way I remember it, we were watching television in the bedroom together when the doorbell rang. I was so excited. We never had guests, especially surprise ones. So I remember eagerly wheeling out the door and being one to answer it. When I opened the door, I was met by 2 women from DFS and a deputy sheriff. "Is your mother here?" asked one of the visitors. "Yes." Mama walked out as on cue, and DFS officer said, "Ma'am, can you come out to the front porch, please?" She did, and the 4 of them talked outside for a few minutes, and then returned to the living room where I was interviewed. I get how this has become another situation that people ask about with frustration. Why didn't you tell them anything when you had the chance? I didn't think my life was odd at that time. This was before I had access to a laptop, the boys, the widened lens on what reality would look like. Mama and I went to the movies and stayed up all night to talk about Brave or whatever new movie was being hyped. Sometimes we slept in a tent together in the middle of the living room. She'd hold a flashlight in front of her face like the Blair Witch Project and make me laugh with her spooky howls. The cat would join us and chase after the spotlight from the flashlight, making us both lovingly chuckle. I look back now and I think maybe DFS had asked the right questions. They might have sensed something was off. Their questions begged for negative answers. "Are there any bruises on your body, Gypsy?" "No, because there weren't any." Can we look at your legs and arms, Gypsy?" They did. They searched me for signs of physical abuse. They went to see my bathroom where it looked like I had been decorated by a unicorn or something. Sorry. They did. They searched me for signs of physical abuse. They went to see my bedroom where it looked like it had been decorated by a unicorn or something. Pink and magical, princess sheets and stuffed animals galore. "Tell us about your life, Gypsy," I remember being asked. From the DFS reports I now have, I see their visit was initiated by a hotline call from St. John's Hospital, stating that a doctor could not find any symptoms that would support that what my mother alleged was wrong with me. Further, the inconsistent information regarding my birth dates and other personal information, as well as a lack of medical diagnosis, prompted DFS to determine whether I was a runaway or a missing juvenile. They also wanted to ensure that Mama was my biological mother. So while they focused on asking for Mama's driver's license and my social security card, I showed off my toys and dolls and dresses to them. The report states that Mama told them she had been in a bad marriage and changed our names and locations to avoid my father. But in the same report, it says when confronted about all the inconsistent information that she had provided to the hospital, Claudine stated she didn't know why the birth dates and personal information were wrong. So which is it? She didn't know why the dates were wrong, or she changed them to avoid an abusive husband. The blatantly contradicting answers to the same question are so obvious to me as lies. And I highlighted this because, again, this is to Gypsy. The blatantly contradicting answers to the same question are so obvious to me. It is lies. Just saying. But the investigators didn't seem to notice. Instead, the reports continues. DFS and I cleared the scene without further incident. They never came back. Another institution that dropped the ball. So she says another institution that dropped the ball. So her first institution that dropped the ball was the school. That really didn't matter about the school, right? The school really didn't matter because, again, that wasn't a first instance. So DFS really didn't matter either because technically, if there was nothing to say, she wasn't technically being abused at the time in her eyes, obviously, right? I don't know. Behind on any chapters, I have 1 through 4 already up on my YT of me reading. As each year passed and another surgery or painful test was performed, my childhood innocence began to be replaced with the ability to observe and make connections about my mother's behaviors and what she instructed me to do or say. After that DFS visit, Mama became paranoid about strangers. She disconnected our doorbell and made sure all the windows had black trash bags over them. Equally weird was when I found my Medicaid card, which revealed my actual birth year of 91. I was living a life in which I thought I was 4 years younger than I was. She told me it was a typo. I believed her, but I sensed the discrepancy shifting and tectonic plate of our private continent separating us and allowing more suspicion to creep in. I had been taught to live a life of lies and deception, an accomplice to my mother's fraud, which made me feel sinful and burdened with feeling of filth. For a Catholic, guilt can keep you up at nights. Catholicism and Southern Louisiana go together like bread and butter. In Golden Meadow, everyone had a shrine to the Virgin Mary on their lawn. I was christened Catholic and grew up going to Catholic Mass every Sunday with my daddy Claude and Momsy Emma. Mama used to tell everyone Gypsy's going to be a nun when she grows up. Growing up near New Orleans, there was a strong Catholic influence, obviously the biggest being Fat Tuesday, or in French, Mardi Gras, which signified the beginning of Lent, the holiest of time of the year that leads up to Easter, Christ's resurrection. But there was a flip side, the supernatural influence of voodoo and witchcraft, pagan rituals, tarot, and fortune-telling. When my mother put me in vacation Bible school where she'd work as a volunteer, she bought plastic mini statues of the saints like St. Joseph and St. Ignace from the gift shop. I already thought I was going to be a nun, so I made an altar in my bedroom where I placed the saints. I aligned my stuffed animals as a congregation along with my cats, and we'd all attend little church. I was the priest. I led us all in prayer and gave out communion, feeding crackers and grape juice to my cats. After I started to get a glimpse of Mama's true ways, I'd pray to God at my personal altar and at Sunday Mass to send me a blessing to make all the ickiness go away. No blessings came. My family members never came. My father didn't come. The doctors didn't come. No teacher or principal came. DFS came and then left. I was mad at God because I'd ask him in church and before bed and in my head over and over, God, make this tormenting hell stop, please. Please help. But there was no help in sight, at least not in my sight. So no one came. No family members because you never said anything. Your father, because again, you never said anything. The doctors were there and again, you never said anything. The teachers or principals weren't even aware of this. And DFS, again, if you were living this tormenting hell, wouldn't you tell the doctors that? Going to Disneyland was torture. I know. It's so funny to me that we don't hear about the trips. We're not hearing about the trips yet. I don't know if that's to come, but... Okay, so we're on chapter 6, guys. Lignippy? A little something extra you probably won't be expecting. So I looked this up and it's basically like a small gift or a small gesture. Maybe you're surprised by it, things like that. Everyone in Mama's family knew she was a hoarder. Before we arrived in Springfield, Missouri, when I was 15 years old, we had been traveling light. With just the clothing in our suitcases and a few of our favorite things, my mother's baby pillow and my stuffed blue dog, ingenuously named Blue Doggy, we bounced around from the time I was 8. I imagine that without a permanent place for my mother to store all her emotional baggage, she doubled down on collecting physical baggage once we landed in Springfield, where we were blessed to receive our Habitat for Humanity house on Volunteer Way. Lanyup. Yeah, there you go. Lanyup. I looked it up. I just didn't remember what it was. Thank you so much for that pronunciation. I appreciate it. We frequented the yard sales and brought crap just to buy it, like game consoles, souvenirs from other people's vacations, and even furniture we didn't need. It was mostly clothing she hoarded. My mother couldn't say no to a donation. She loved a good going out of business sale, even if the items on 90% markdown were useless to us. She was a shopaholic for sure. Maybe this was another coping mechanism for dealing with the clinical depression. Okay. The days after again, she's diagnosing her mom. The days after holidays were her favorite time to run out to JCPenney's and Dillard's to snatch up prom dresses after prom season ended. to Michael's to round up next year's Christmas decorations, and she'd buy merch for events after the fact, like a bicentennial celebration t-shirt a year after the fireworks show. Then there were the things we'd steal. My mother taught me the art of shoplifting at a very young age. She had a family history of kleptomania. I found out very recently, legend has it that my grandmother Emma had been arrested for stealing, and she had been caught and banned from food and clothing stores on more than one occasion. So that doesn't have to be a legend. You can actually look that up, Gypsy, yourself. It's public record if your momsy Emma got sent to jail, but we know your mom never did, so FYI. My mother grew up with a comfortable middle-class lifestyle, so any thievery must have been just for a high. Did Emma teach my mom how to steal, which is why Mama taught me how to? Well, sometimes I believe we stole because she wanted to get me things that we simply couldn't afford. I also think she experienced a thrill from the satisfaction of knowing we pulled one over. I remember my mother stealing a wheelchair from the Children's Hospital in Kansas City. I just had eye surgery on my lazy eye, a condition I actually had, because she can't explain that one away. And she wheeled me right out of the building and into our van. Later, she took nail polish remover and a toothbrush and scrubbed off the hospital's name. The hospital had trusted us to use the wheelchair until we got to the car. She loaded it into the car as nonchalantly as you would a bag of groceries, and we drove away. I imagined her thinking, I wonder when or if they'll ever notice it's gone. We actually had several, maybe 5 wheelchairs that sat throughout our small home. Like her pewter wizard figurines, my mother collected wheelchairs. We had a collapsible one, a jazzy power wheelchair, and another power wheelchair that was custom made, so everything from the seat to the hydraulics was fit for me. Medicaid paid for the custom power wheelchair. My mom paid for the travel wheelchair she bought at Target or Walmart. Insurance covered the jazzy. As I grew older, my mother preferred me to use the foldable wheelchair as it required her to push me and made me less independent. Sitting in a wheelchair in the store aisles helped me more easily catch and conceal items my mother would knock into my lap. When she wasn't dressing me as a boy, I'd head to Walmart in my princess costume. The tool of the skirt being a great canopy for hiding merchandise. And for the items that couldn't be sat on or hid underneath my beanie cap, my mother taught me the barcode swap. Remove the barcode sticker from the cheaper item and place it on the more expensive one. Then use the self-checkout line. Were self-checkout lines a thing back then? Because I don't remember them really even being a thing. It's kind of strange to me. Again, you have to remember this was before 2015. This was before 2011, I believe. So, since Sam's Club didn't have metal detectors, I'd be able to fit 14 or 15 CDs on me. So she went to Sam's Club to theft, so that's a good one. We steal random stuff at Hobby Lobby, mostly arts and crafts items, which I used a lot of. My outlet was drawing and painting and making characters with those googly eyes you glue on and different colored feathers. I also loved to sketch. When I went to prison, one of the items that I asked Dad and Christy to save from the house was my book of artwork. But one time we tripped an alarm at Hobby Lobby, and as if they had been waiting for the moment for a long time, the manager and the minion ran to where we were, just outside the door. Search her, the manager said, pointing to me in particular, the part of my dress the crafts crushed underneath. My mother put on her fake victim voice and acted all appalled, but they actually did it. They searched where I was seated in my wheelchair and discovered the gluey, sticky, sparkly contraband. We were marched to the back office, and I remember thinking, what a cool job being the manager of a Hobby Lobby must be. Okay. How impotent the manager must feel being able to watch people roam around his store from the one-way glass, none of them to the wiser. How differently all the shoppers might act if they realized they were being observed. I knew how it felt to be looked at all the time, how to act when being observed, and like the shoppers in the store, I didn't have the power to look back. I wanted to have an advantage like the managers for once in my life. So how do you transcribe, I think it would be cool to be a manager of Hobby Lobby because he has a one-way looking glass? Make it make sense. Believe it or not, the police were called and charges were pressed. Mama and I were banned from ever returning to Hobby Lobby in the entire country. At least that was my understanding. Mama was pissed because we had to hire an attorney and everything. So this is an instance where, again, we found that there's a mugshot of Dee Dee, and she's never been charged or put into jail, or there's no charges on her. But it didn't stop her from stealing from other stores, only to bring the goods home, never to be used. I'd later learned that Mama had several charges against her in Louisiana, but they didn't follow when we left the state. Charges usually don't follow you, but you do get put on like a wanted list or whatever. And again, her mom, they've looked this up. She's never had charges before. She can look it up. She's never had charges. She can look up her grandma having charges. She can look up all of that. It's public information. That's how we can look up all her stuff. Wild. In Missouri, the bedroom where my mother and I slept had so much stuff piled on it, I needed to carve a pathway for myself from the door to the bed. My wheelchair barely fit through the doorway. In fact, we had to take our bedroom door off its hinges. There wasn't room for it to open completely, which made it impossible for me to wheel through without crashing into the door frame. So again, she's going on still with the whole thing that she was always in the wheelchair in the home. But we can tell from photos that her wheelchair wouldn't have even fit in that room. 1. And 2, I was trying to find if the doors were actually taken off. So if anybody has those pictures, definitely send them to me. You know those giant black bags you use to throw leaves and grass cuttings in? The ones that you can step in if you are shorter than 5'3" like me? They were everywhere, all filled with clothes. And as if there were dresser drawers or filing cabinets, my mother knew the contents of each bag. She knew where everything was. The premiere of the new Jurassic Park movie is today. No problem. She'd head out to the shed or into the back bedroom and whip out a t-shirt with a T-Rex on it. Well, yeah, it was a Habitat house. I didn't even think about that. Thank you. She saved everything. I always wondered what she was afraid of losing. Whatever it was, it controlled her life. Beyond stealing and hoarding, my mother was being treated by a doctor for bipolar disorder. Again, I don't believe this is in her medical records. I was too small to take note whether the shopping sprees coincided with the mania that she'd experienced for weeks on end. I couldn't keep up with her during her manic episodes. How does she know there were manic episodes? She'd stay up all night and clean, do the dishes, move the black bags of clothing around, and wash the clothes and fold them, only to put them back in the black bags. When she was depressed, Mama would cover the windows with black garbage bags and stay in bed for weeks at a time. After the DFS visit, the garbage bags became permanent. So she's going back again. She's flip-flopping. She keeps flip-flopping timelines. Get up, get out of bed, I'd say, as I would try to roll her over and off the bed. So you're telling me she was so malnourished, but she tried to roll her mom off the bed. Got it. I'd say as I would try to roll her over off the bed. You can't stay asleep all the time. I'm hungry. She was receiving disability checks for her bipolar disorder, and once a week a woman who worked for Social Security office would make visits for therapy. So she's basically saying that for a moment in time, somebody else was coming in the home for therapy with her mom. Again, another opportunity she did not seize. Just saying. It got to a point where my mother didn't want to talk to her anymore, so she stopped letting her in. She took Xanax and Ambien to knock herself out, especially after something set her off. And it could be anything. A clerk at the checkout counter was rude to her. Someone didn't return her phone call. She saw postings of Christy and my dad on Facebook, all legitimate reasons to do that, honestly, in my opinion, right? She'd head straight to the bed and wouldn't even get up to eat. When I was much younger, before I understood my life was totally abnormal, these episodes scared me sick. I would frantically figure out how to get food to her. I knew how to make toast, so I make a lot of it. Then I graduated to making Pillsbury biscuits in a toaster oven. Even in her despair, she'd set an alarm, and when it went off, she'd give me my medicine and my feedings. Because if she didn't, I might begin to see that nothing bad would happen to me. When the bipolar condition was not controlled, she'd stop being my mother, which scared the shit out of me. Now I think that maybe she liked seeing me afraid because I showed her love. So this bothers me. So she's saying her mom just liked her doing that. So she's contradicting herself, saying that her mom has bipolar disorder, right? Mom has bipolar disorder, but yet she's doing this on purpose because she knew I was afraid. So you can't correlate your mom just doing it to do it because she wants to make you afraid with a mental disorder. It doesn't fit together. It doesn't mesh together like that. Before prison, yes. The one outside, she was not walking. You can tell she's on the chair when she goes up the ramp. Yeah, so she needed that attention. Was this part of the game? The pulling one over on me, conning me so I'd care for her and fuss over her. She'd always say I was the only person she had in life. You're my heart, she'd tell me. When we'd take baths together, she'd remind me how it's me and her against the world forever. One time I noticed raised red marks on her arm. I remember rubbing my fingers along them, sprinkling bath water over her as if the droplets would magically heal them. As I investigated the marks more closely, the word pain came into view, appearing like a film negative submerged in a basin of developing solution. That looks like it hurts, I said, appalled that she had carved the word pain into her forearm. How recently or long ago, I could not know. It relieves the pain, she said. So apparently she has a scar on her arm. I wonder if the coroner can corroborate the scars she may have had on her arm. Dee Dee's. I don't know. I swallowed my own hurt down, wanting to make her pain go away, so I bandaged her wound for her, feeling a sense of purpose. So she bandaged it, not knowing how old it was. Got it. When she said, I help you, you help me, we take care of each other. She threatened to kill herself on many occasions. You know, Gypsy, I might look big like a rhino, but I don't have the skin of it, she'd say. As I grew older, I realized she was guilting me to control her. As I grew older, I realized she was guilting me to control me. At first, it was jarring to hear her blurt out, I just want to die. Because I was afraid of what would happen to me. We were all each other had, and I wanted to protect our little family. Over time, it became something she'd say when we were having a disagreement or I was sassing her. On several occasions, I wanted to know why my mother didn't want someone other than me in her life, to love her, make her feel special, and genuinely be her companion. I began to wish she had someone else so she would loosen her grip on me, let me go a little. There would be men who asked my mom on a date. Her answer to them was always, my focus is my daughter. And why do you want me with a man so much, baby? She'd ask me. When I'd see a nice man at the hospital waiting room or at the Ronald McDonald House and nudge her as a way to say, go talk to him. I want a daddy was always my reply. What can you get from daddy that I can't give you? She'd answer. We both knew it was a rhetorical question. Was she using me as a shield, or was inviting others into our lives going to increase the odds of someone finding us out? The same reason she kept me out of school and isolated me from the entire family? Had I been in school, I would hope that experienced educators would catch on that my IQ was not low, and a school nurse administering albuterol for asthma would realize real quick that my lungs fill up like balloons. They wouldn't. Given the opportunity, someone at some point was bound to figure out that I was intelligent, mobile, and older than I thought. So my mother kept the circle small. Beyond closed doors, she'd blame her being alone all on me. Your dad left me because of you. When her shadow side came out during the depressive weeks, that blame turned into disdain, and she'd say her favorite line: there are 8 personalities in my head, and 7 of them don't like you. I don't believe that for a second. On those days, I tried to find a place to hide in our small little house, so to not further clutter her mind. But at nighttime, she'd still come for me, so I could lie all night with her 7 hateful personalities. This is your fault, Gypsy. I do everything for you. I've sacrificed everything, and this is how you repay me. The hits kept coming, even as I pretended to sleep, muzzled with the CPAP machine, choking on my mother's contempt. I even got blamed for her sisters not favoring her, which made it hard for me to form a relationship with all her siblings. My mother positioned a wall between me and her family, the Petries, which is one of the reasons I didn't call them for help. Any failures in my mom's life were because of me. Eventually, there was no one else around to blame. We only had temporary friends, no consistent home, always starting over in a new place. She couldn't blame her family, who she estranged us from. And at this point, I had minimal contact with my dad. Her only constant was me. So that's another reason. And I mean, I don't think it could be by choice that her mom's constant was her. You know, I am one of those, Zora, thank you for the heart. I'm one of those people that believe that I don't think Dee Dee had any kind of severe mental illnesses. I think, again, I don't know her family history, but I really believe, this is my opinion on it, I really believe that Dee Dee herself, Joni, thank you for the heart. I really believe that Dee Dee herself did have, like, depression. Because, I mean, look at what the man she loved did to her. Like, the one man that she let in, had a child with. Look what he did to her. And he did it to her numerous times. And it seemed like it was being thrown in her face, right? So, it's understandable that she was depressed. And also, you know, with the whole Claude thing, her dad, if that was true with Dee Dee and all of that stuff, then Joni, thank you for the level up. If that was all true, then, you know, she had reason to be depressed. There was a lot of reason to be depressed. I don't think you can be manic and not be bipolar. If you have any kind of mental depression, anxiety, anything like that, you can be manic. A manic state is because of a mental disorder. But again, Dee Dee was never diagnosed with anything like that at all. So much. So I just read chapter 5 and 6. Tomorrow we will be on chapter 7. Again, as usual, this will be uploaded on my YT, so check it out. Tomorrow I will not be reading. I will be live in the morning, but I will not be reading until Monday.